candles, online. That's cute. That's what my uncle said when I told my family I was starting a business, a candle business, from home, online. He laughed so hard I thought he might choke on his wine. My sister Layla leaned in with this smug little smirk and said, "That's adorable, Sana, but maybe don't quit your day job just yet." My mom didn't even laugh. She pulled me aside like I'd just confessed something shameful. She whispered, "Sweetheart, you have a child. You should be saving for his future, not chasing some arts and crafts fantasy." That night, after dinner, I sat in the car with my 5-year-old son Milo asleep in the back seat, holding a half-melted candle in my lap, the one I brought to show them. I remember staring at that candle like it was a piece of me they'd just rejected, like they'd laughed at a part of my soul. 10 years later, we're at another family gathering, a wedding, same relatives, same loud voices. Only this time it's different. My cousin Tyrell comes up to me totally casual and says, "Hey, I applied for a marketing role at this company. Ever Ember? You ever heard of it?" I pulled out my phone, opened the dashboard, and showed him his own resume sitting in my inbox. "Which department?" I asked, smiling. "I own the company you just applied to." He froze. Then he blinked. Then he said nothing. And just like that, the entire room shifted. Uncle Raymond was quiet for the first time in his life. Layla suddenly found something very interesting on her phone. My mom just stared at me like she didn't recognize who I was. But I was the same person. I was still Sana, still the woman who once made candles in a cramped apartment kitchen while her son slept in the next room. Still the woman they all thought was wasting her time. What changed was everything else. But let's go back, because to really understand that moment, you have to know what led up to it. You have to know what it feels like to be doubted by the people you love, to have them look at your dream and laugh, because they can't see it the way you do. You have to know how many nights I spent wondering if they were right, and how one tiny flame, literally, was the only light I had left to hold on to. This is my story about how I went from a cute little candle shop to running a multi-million-dollar business, about how the same people who mocked me ended up asking me for a job, and about how I built something from scratch, not just for me, but for my son, for his future. The same future they told me I was throwing away. So if you've ever had a dream that nobody believed in, if you've ever been laughed at, talked down to, told to be realistic, this story is for you. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's doing so well. You don't even need to. 10 years ago, my life didn't look anything like it does now. I lived in a tiny, second-floor apartment in Westchester, just outside the city. The kind of place where you could hear your neighbors arguing through the walls and smell burnt toast from 3 doors down. The living room doubled as my son's playroom. My kitchen was barely big enough to turn around in. And somehow, I believed I could build a business from that space. At the time, I was 28, a single mom. My son Milo had just turned 5, and he was everything to me. Sweet, bright-eyed, curious. He'd crawl up onto the counter and ask what scent we were making that day. Lavender, vanilla. He called it magic wax. And I guess that's what it felt like when we were alone together, just us and the warm glow of melted wax and essential oils. By day, I worked a corporate desk job, administrative assistant at an insurance firm. Gray cubicles, cold coffee, and fluorescent lights. I'd leave Milo with my neighbor, Sandra, pray she'd get him to kindergarten on time, and sit in traffic every morning thinking, this can't be it. This can't be all there is. And yet I stayed, because bills don't care about dreams. The idea for Ever Ember came on a random Tuesday. I'd been experimenting with candle making as a hobby, melting wax in thrifted pots, mixing scents I couldn't afford to buy in stores. One night, I gave a handmade candle to Sandra as a thank you. She lit it in her living room, posted a photo on Facebook, and within hours, 3 moms from the school drop-off line messaged me asking if I sold them. That little flicker of interest lit something inside me. I started staying up late, pouring wax while Milo slept, labeling jars by hand. I designed a logo using a free app on my phone. I opened a Shopify account, barely knowing what I was doing. I figured, why not? But deep down, I was terrified. because every time I got even a little bit excited about this new path, someone in my family was right there to reel me back in. Not with concern I could have handled. It was mockery, dismissiveness. That tone people use when they pretend they're joking but actually mean every word. Uncle Raymond was the worst. He ran a used car dealership and considered himself the family's business genius. When I mentioned my candle website at a dinner one night, he snorted and said, "What's next? Handmade shoelaces? Maybe a rock painting empire?" He loved being the loudest person in any room, and he used humor like a hammer, especially when it came to anything he didn't understand. My mother was quieter, but her disappointment cut deeper. She'd call me late at night after everyone else was asleep and ask gently, "Sana, do you think this is really wise? You need stability. Milo needs security. Please don't throw away your career for something uncertain." Her voice always trembled when she said the word uncertain. Even Layla, my younger sister, would drop comments like, "So what's the backup plan? If the candle thing doesn't take off?" Always said with a smile. Always just enough to plant a seed of doubt. But what they didn't see, what they couldn't see, was that this business, however small it seemed, was the first thing that ever felt mine. It didn't just give me hope, it gave me purpose. My job at the firm made me invisible. I clocked in, typed emails, fetched coffee, left no trace. But when I made a candle, when someone said, "This scent reminded me of my childhood," or "This helped me relax after a hard day," I felt seen. And I needed that, more than I realized at the time. Every evening after I put Milo to bed, I'd sit at my kitchen counter with wax splattered on my apron and a notebook full of scent combinations. I wasn't building a business yet. I was building faith in myself. That was the beginning. Before the viral post, before the orders, before the team, before the money, before the day they all laughed at me, and before the day I made them eat their words. It started as a quiet hum of doubt in the background, the kind you try to ignore when you're chasing something new, but the hum grew louder with every family gathering, every sideways comment, every forced laugh. The night it all came to a head was my mother's birthday dinner. She loves hosting, always has. The whole family was there. Uncle Raymond, loud as ever. Layla, dressed like she walked off a Pinterest board. Cousin Terrell, scrolling through his phone between bites. I'd spent the whole day debating whether to bring samples of my new candle line. I designed the packaging myself, poured every jar by hand, and stayed up until 3 a.m. the night before to finish the final batch. I told myself, it'll show them I'm serious. So I brought them. I set 3 small jars on the dining table during dessert. Each had a name and story. First Light, a warm vanilla and cedar blend. Haven, with lavender and sage. And Golden Hour, my favorite, orange blossom with a touch of amber. I explained the scents. Talked about how I was focusing on memory and emotion. How I wanted each candle to feel like a moment you could hold in your hands. And then came the laugh. It started with Raymond. This deep, almost theatrical belly laugh that turned heads. He picked up one of the candles, squinted at the label, and said, "What is this, Sana? Aromatherapy or autobiography?" The room cracked up. Layla added, "Do they come with a journal and a breakup playlist, too?" Tyrell didn't even look up from his phone. He just said, "Man, imagine betting your future on wax." I smiled through it, nodded, pretended like I was in on the joke. But inside, I was unraveling. After dinner, my mother came over, her tone soft but weighted. "They don't mean anything by it," she said, "but maybe don't bring this up at family things, okay? Just keep it private. And think about Milo, sweetheart. Start saving. You know you can't do this forever." That hit harder than any laugh, because she wasn't mocking me. She was trying to protect me. And in her mind, protecting me meant pushing me towards something safe, something ordinary. That night, back in my apartment, I sat on the floor of my kitchen surrounded by jars, wicks, and shipping boxes. I stared at the labels I'd spent weeks designing and whispered, maybe they're right. I thought about deleting my website. I even opened the dashboard and hovered over the Deactivate Store button. Sales had been slow, maybe 5 orders a week. One of my scented oils had gone bad in shipping, and a customer asked for a refund. My packaging supplier had just raised their prices. and Milo had outgrown his sneakers again. Everything felt so fragile, like I was trying to build a house out of fog. I started thinking of job listings again, HR positions, virtual assistant gigs, steady paychecks, predictable hours, health insurance. And for a moment, I felt numb, like I'd already given up, like this dream, this little flicker of light I'd been holding onto wasn't worth all the darkness around it. Then I heard a small voice from the hallway. Milo. Mama? He was holding his blanket, hair messy from sleep. I wiped my eyes quickly and forced a smile. Hey, buddy, couldn't sleep? He nodded. Then he pointed to the candle still burning on the counter. Golden hour. That one smells like your hugs, he said. That's when I lost it. Not in a breakdown way, but in that quiet, full-body sob where everything comes out. All the doubt, all the fear, all the pressure. I sat on the floor and cried into my hands, while my son curled up next to me and rested his head on my lap. Because in that moment, I realized something. They didn't have to believe in me, not my uncle, not my sister, not even my mother. I just needed to believe in myself, and if I couldn't do it for me, I'd do it for the little boy who said my candles smelled like love. After that night, after Milo told me my candles smelled like my hugs, I made a decision. I wasn't going to quit, not because I suddenly had a plan, not because orders were pouring in or the numbers looked good, but because I knew I couldn't keep living like my dreams were hobbies and my fears were facts. I promised myself one thing. For 6 months, I'm going to treat this business like it's already real, not part-time, not a side hustle, a real company. If I fail, I'll fail loud and proud, but I will not fade away quietly. That promise changed everything. The first thing I did was get organized. My living room became a makeshift studio. I pushed the couch against the wall, cleared a table, and bought storage bins from a dollar store. I mapped out my weeks. Mondays were production, Tuesdays for packaging, Wednesdays were marketing. I printed a calendar and wrote CEO hours in bold across it. I knew no one else was going to treat me like a boss until I did it first. Then I got serious about learning. I stopped scrolling for entertainment and started scrolling for answers. I watched every free e-commerce video I could find. I stayed up watching tutorials on SEO, Pinterest marketing, email funnels, words I'd never even heard before. I read case studies of handmade soap shops, jewelry brands, even cupcake businesses. I asked myself, what do they all have that I don't? And the answer was never talent. It was strategy. It was consistency. It was guts. So I changed how I showed up. I redesigned my brand from scratch, gave Ever Ember a story, a purpose. Every candle had a name and a mood, not just scents, feelings. I made labels that looked like they belonged on a shelf at Anthropology, even if they were printed on my $40 inkjet. I chose packaging that felt like a gift, even for a $12 order. I didn't have a marketing team, but I had a phone, so I started showing my process on TikTok, wax pouring, scent mixing, even bloopers. I filmed Milo helping me stick labels on jars with his crooked little fingers, giggling and singing along to the radio. People loved it. One of those videos, just a 30-second clip of Milo whispering, "Mommy's making magic," while I poured wax, got shared, then reshared, then reposted. Thousands of views, then orders, 20 orders, then 40, then 100. I cried the night we hit 100. I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by empty jars, bubble wrap, and a pile of thank you notes I was handwriting, and I cried. Not from stress, not from exhaustion, from awe. This is working. It wasn't perfect. I made mistakes. Shipped the wrong scent once. Underestimated a sale and ran out of wicks. My hands were dry from wax and my back hurt from packing boxes on the floor. But for the first time in my life, every moment felt mine. I stopped asking for approval. I stopped sharing my progress at family dinners. I didn't need their applause anymore. When Uncle Raymond asked, "Still doing the wax thing?" I just smiled and said, "Every day." What he didn't know was that by then, I'd already hit $10,000 in sales. I was reinvesting every dollar, working with a local supplier, looking at co-packing options, talking to an accountant. I wasn't just doing candles, I was scaling a brand. Milo would sit beside me at the table after school, homework next to my shipping labels. He started calling me the boss. And you know what? I started to believe him. I went from fearing failure to fearing regret, from asking, what if this doesn't work, to asking, what if it does? And little by little, the people around me started to notice something had shifted. Not because I told them, because they could feel it, because I walked different, talked different, because I no longer flinched when someone questioned me. I wasn't defending a dream anymore. I was building one. 10 years had passed since that night I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by wax and doubts, crying into my hands while Milo slept beside me. A lot had changed. Ever Ember was no longer a dream held together by hope and duct tape. It was a thriving brand. We had a full production studio, a team of 40 employees, and our candles were sold in boutique stores across the country. We just partnered with a national home goods chain. I'd been interviewed on podcasts, featured in a lifestyle magazine, and invited to speak at a Women in Business summit. But here's the thing. None of that felt as significant as what happened at my cousin's wedding. It was a warm afternoon, and the venue was one of those rustic chic places with exposed wood beams, string lights, and mason jars on every table. Everyone was dressed up. The drinks were flowing. I hadn't seen most of my extended family in over a year, and to be honest, I'd been nervous to go. Not because I was ashamed. I wasn't. I just didn't feel like explaining myself again. But this time, no one asked. Not one person brought up my little candle thing. Not one smirk. No sideways comments. Instead, there were polite smiles, vague nods. It was like they knew something had changed. They just didn't know what. Until Tyrell walked up to me near the bar. He was wearing a navy suit, one hand in his pocket, drink in the other. He gave me this casual nod and said, "Hey, I applied for a job at this company, Ever Ember, I think. You know them?" I blinked. I wasn't sure if he was joking. I thought maybe someone had put him up to it. But his face was completely serious, oblivious. I pulled my phone from my clutch, opened the hiring dashboard, searched his name. There it was. Tyrell N. Heron. Applied 3 days ago. Marketing coordinator. I turned the screen toward him, holding back a smile. "Which department?" I asked, locking eyes with him. "I own the company you just applied to." The color drained from his face. Slowly, like someone turning a dimmer switch. He looked from the screen to me, then back again. "You own Ever Ember?" "I do," I said, calm and steady. And in that moment, time seemed to stretch. I could feel the shift in the room. Uncle Raymond had been mid-laugh with someone at a nearby table, but when he caught the words, "own the company," his laugh cut off. Layla, who'd been watching from a few steps away, froze with her champagne glass half raised. My mom, seated with her cousins, turned slightly, as if she felt something was happening, something important. Tyrell cleared his throat and stammered, "I didn't know." "I know," I said. "Most people don't." That was the first time I truly saw the power I'd built, not in the numbers, not in the products, but in their faces. The people who once laughed, now stunned into silence by something I created with my own hands. I wasn't angry. I didn't feel spiteful. What I felt was clarity. This wasn't revenge. This was reflection. Everything they said I couldn't do, I did it. Everything they warned me about, I navigated it. Everything they said would break me, it built me. Uncle Raymond approached me later, quieter than I'd ever seen him. He gave me a nod, the kind that's more apology than greeting. Layla said nothing, but I caught her looking at me more than once throughout the night, like she was trying to figure out how I got from there to here. And my mom hugged me before we left, really hugged me. Not a polite, quick family squeeze, a real one. She whispered, "You were right, and I'm proud of you." That was the moment that got me. Not Tyrell's shock, not Raymond's silence, my mother's words. Because deep down, that's what I'd been chasing all along. Not just financial freedom, not just success, but validation, recognition. From the people who watched me struggle and told me I couldn't make it. Now they knew I did. That night at the wedding, after the music faded and the small talk turned into quiet exits, I stood in the parking lot with my son, now 15, taller than me, hoodie pulled over his head like all teenagers do. He'd watched the whole exchange with Terrell. He saw the look on my cousin's face, the silence from Uncle Raymond, the way people suddenly leaned in when they realized what I had built. Milo didn't say anything at first. He just smiled, shoved his hands into his pockets, and said, "That was kinda awesome, Mom." I laughed. "You think so?" He nodded. "You're like a boss now." I drove home that night with the windows down and a peace I hadn't felt in years. The truth is, I didn't build Ever Ember just to prove something to my family. Not really. In the beginning, sure. I wanted them to take me seriously, to believe in me. But somewhere along the way, their doubt stopped being the fuel. I stopped running from their voices and started running toward my own. What I didn't expect was that in building this company, I was also rebuilding myself. I became someone who didn't flinch when the website glitched, when orders got delayed, when a supplier backed out. I became someone who could lead a team, pitch to investors, negotiate contracts, speak on stage. I became someone my son could point to and say, "My mom did that." The same woman they once mocked for selling wax online was now paying salaries, offering maternity leave, donating part of her profits to women's shelters. We'd launched a scholarship program for young entrepreneurs last spring. I wasn't just running a business, I was building a legacy. And the most beautiful part? I did it on my terms, without a fancy business degree, without a trust fund, without their approval. Just grit, creativity, and the unshakable belief that my story mattered. For anyone watching this who's ever been underestimated by your family, your friends, even by yourself, I want you to hear this. You don't owe anyone proof. You owe yourself peace. Peace of knowing you tried. Peace of knowing you chose courage over comfort. Peace of knowing that you didn't shrink to make others comfortable. Because the people who laugh the loudest, they're often the most afraid to try something themselves. Uncle Raymond still runs his dealership. Layla's working in HR. Terrell didn't get the job, though he did send me a follow-up email. He said he respected what I built, said he wished he'd taken me more seriously years ago. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry. I've let all that go. But because some stories don't need closure. They just need distance. And my mom? She's my biggest cheerleader now. She keeps a candle from every collection on her mantle, tells her friends she knew all along. I let her have that, because at the end of the day, she was scared, just like I was. But where I leaned into faith, she clung to fear. The difference? I chose to believe, not in statistics, not in perfect timing, but in myself. If you're out there holding a dream that nobody else can see yet, keep holding it. Protect it, nurture it, build it brick by brick until it's strong enough to stand on its own. And when they laugh, smile. Let them. Because one day you might be standing across from the same people who doubted you, only this time you're the one holding the keys, not to prove them wrong, but because you were always right about yourself. If you've ever been told your dreams were cute or unrealistic, if you've ever stood in a room full of people who looked at your ambition like it was a joke, I want you to remember this. You don't need their permission. You don't need their applause. You just need one thing, belief. Because one day you'll look back and realize the people who tried to talk you out of your dream were never the ones meant to build it with you. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own journey, like the video, share it with someone who needs it, and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your story too. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more true stories about courage, growth, and proving to yourself that you're more powerful than they ever knew. From my heart to yours. Keep going. Keep building. Keep believing. This is just the beginning.